John Brotherton on the show. What is going on, man?
What's up, my man? How are we?
I'm doing great, man. Although I don't want to get too much into politics because I don't know too much about the topic. I am following
Sure.
mainstream media and what Trump tweets. I mean, what is going on in the States? You guys are under fire. It's been crazy. That's all you're talking about is the election right now.
It has. It's been an uneasy, day, so to speak, and uneasy times. But I just look forward to the day that no matter, the division between us, we can come together, whichever side of the aisle you're on, and realize that we are much stronger as one, and that there's much more power in loving each other than, throwing mud at each other. I'm blessed to be, a citizen of this amazing country, and, I'm still grateful for that. I love people on both sides of the aisle. That's the truth. So for me, it's about loving each other and coming together, no matter what the times are.
Well, you and I met through fantasy football. I guess I had contacted you or somehow, or
Yeah.
I knew you were into fantasy football. And I literally have just been easing up on the content just for the past couple of days because I don't think anyone's going to listen to what I'm saying. They're so focused on this election. I know a lot of people are. By the time I release this, maybe there's a decision. Who knows? But I just wanted to say it's been crazy there. Now, a lot of people don't know this, and I didn't talk about it so much in fantasy, but I'm actually based out in Canada. So I'm kind of like, I'm seeing all these memes come out where you've got these guys behind the curtain out looking, behind the blinds, eating some chips, kind of like we're just sitting there watching. It's like a movie for us, man. The fire. We're just sitting back here, but yeah, it's just been crazy over there. I had to bring that up because that's just everywhere right now.
Yeah, no, I feel you, man. You've been a guest on my show, The Fantasy Football Cause, and we took the week off too for obvious reasons. So, I just hope that we come to a peaceful resolution and, like I said, find a way to come together on our differences as time goes on, no matter what.
For those who don't know you, can you just introduce yourself to everybody? I mean, I think for me, when I discovered you, I would say was Fuller House, being a fan of Full House as a child. And then Fuller House came out. I had to watch it. There's no other way. It's on Netflix. I had to watch it. I'm introduced to this character, Matt, who I think is hilarious on the show. It's a little corny, but it's funny. It's funny. I actually found myself laughing out loud when you had the puppet on Fuller House and you were simulating. Anyway, it's just really funny with your little puppet there you had going there. I loved it. I thought it was great. So can you tell people a little bit about you, kind of your journey? And I'm going to dive into, I got some Hollywood questions for you too.
Yeah, man. First of all, Netflix was such a blessing, and being on Fuller House was such a blessing in my life. It definitely was a game changer. But I had moved to LA to kind of pursue this crazy dream right out of college in 2003. Literally jumped on I-5 South from Seattle with nothing but the clothes in the back of my car, with no place to live, nowhere to go, and just a big dream and a lot of hope. So arrived here in 2003 and jumped right in, started doing student films and getting an acting class and doing whatever I could to get my, to get my art on, so to speak, to shape my craft. And, it was a slow burn. From there, it starts small with commercials and a guest spot. And then my first real role that paid the bills, so to speak, is I booked a contract role on One Life to Live, which is a soap opera here in the States. Which was awesome. Moved to New York, got married to my wonderful wife that I've been with for 17 years now. From there, then it was a journey of bopping around. I've been fortunate enough to work kind of in all corners of the business, something that not every actor gets to say, but I feel very grateful. I've done, big action flicks like Furious 7, thrillers like The Conjuring, bopped around a lot of guest stars on TV, got to do some fun things there. Like I was killed by Dexter. And then no doubt, Fuller House was a dream job that I spent the last 5 years working on with just amazing people, amazing, cast and crew, amazing production company, working at Warner Brothers lot every day, an amazing distributor like Netflix. All of it was just a dream come true. And then working with, puppets like, hello.
That's Oliver, right?
Like Oliver. Yep, totally. So he was, hi. Yeah, no, man, it was a blast. My kids love this thing. In fact, my daughter heard me talking in the background. She had to go get it out of my closet. Fuller House was so fun because it was a live audience situation. God, I just got out of the gym. I'm still sweating. But performing in front of a live audience really brought me back to when I fell in love with acting. Like back when I was, young. I started going to drama camp when I was, 10 years old during the summer. And performing in front of a live audience was such a rush. It was like being an athlete, because I was also an athlete, but it was like even more. You could interact, you could control the crowd in such a way that it was such a rush for me that I loved. And you can feel your performance come to life by the gasps in an audience, or the silence of an audience, or the laughter of an audience. And then fast forward through TV and film, you don't do that much. And then you get back on a sitcom where it's a live audience show every Friday night, and getting to be silly and make people laugh in front of a live audience. Not only a live audience, but a live audience that is so excited to be there. We had fans from all over the world, flying, wait in line sometimes 24 hours to get, they'd be waiting in line all night long at Warner Brothers to get in to see us perform live, with the most gracious, giving, humble cast I've ever worked with. I mean, it was just like we were a bunch of best friends making people laugh. And it was like, what a joy. It really was such a joy. And it was the time when I was raising kids. I'm still raising kids, but they were of the age where it was really special for them as well. Like, they would kind of grew up on the set of Fuller House, coming to visit Daddy, and those
Right.
years, that how fun it was for them to, sit in the audience and, watch Daddy and his friends make people laugh. So it was just a huge blessing, man, and a ton of fun. It was, just a dream come true.
Right. This show is about fitness, entrepreneurship, and sports. And I think you encompass all those elements. Some people watch this like, well, why do you have an actor on? Probably that's what they're thinking, because I think that you encompass all of them. And I'm going to touch upon all of them, guys. So if you want to hear about sports,
Sure.
we'll get to that for sure. So I got to ask you, when do you think, you hit that point where like, damn, I made it, and not only that, you probably haven't even peaked yet. Like, do you want like a Denzel Washington type role? Are you looking to aim for the stars? I mean, you've done really, really well. And I understand how hard it is to be in Hollywood, period. Not only have you done that, you've been on a top show, you've done some great things already. But when was that point, number one? Yes, I've made it. This is good. When was that? Was it Fuller House? Was it before? When did you feel kind of
You know,
fulfilled?
it's been a long kind of grind. So it's not like I had one aha moment. I can tell you the first time that when I booked One Life to Live, and I got to tell, when I was like bartending and waiting tables, and I got to tell my boss, like, I'm out. Sorry, I'm moving to New York this weekend. Like, it was literally overnight. That was a pretty cool moment. But, since then it's been really, I've always gauged my success on, can I feed my family with my art, right? Like, it doesn't matter how your, celebrity status or any of that, because, careers like this go in waves, and you'll have great years and years that you're fighting. And so for me, it's always just been about, can I take care of my family? That is how I measure my success. And so, it has been, there hasn't necessarily been that one moment, except, like I said, early on in my career was that. A fun moment for me was I took my first paycheck from One Life to Live, and I cashed it, literally cash, and went down to the Diamond District and bought the diamond that I, put in an engagement ring for my wife. So that was a pretty cool moment, because having, come from humble beginnings, it was certainly more money than I'd ever had in my hands. And to be able to, get the ring that I wanted for my wife, and kind of go through that process as a result of a dream that I was following, was a really cool moment. I remember when I bought the ring, and I literally went down to pick it up between work. So I rehearsed in the morning, then I had a couple hours off. I was in New York. I went down on the subway, purchased the ring. They gave it to me in this little like envelope thing, and I had it in my pocket on the subway. And I remember keeping my hand like on the outside of my pocket, holding this thing like tight against my body, and just like feeling, holy cow, I can't believe that I'm able to do this right now. And I'm going to propose to my wife when I see, she was in LA packing up our apartment, because I had just moved to New York like overnight when I booked this job. And then when I was rehearsing on set and I went back to shoot, I literally kept the ring in my wardrobe pocket. So I did not let it leave my side. And so that was a moment in time where it was definitely a pretty cool feeling that I was able to use, the fruits of my labor to, marry my dream girl, and have that kind of special moment.
And how
But
many
other than
years?
that, it's little moments throughout your whole career when you're like on set with somebody really awesome, and I'm looking, Vin Diesel in the eyes, going, "This is pretty cool," or I'm having a one-on-one with Kurt Russell, or I was, sitting on the side of CSI with Ted Danson, picking his brain about his career, or on the kill table, staring up at Dexter, looking up at me, ready to, kill me, so to speak.
Oh, you were in Dexter. You were one of the victims.
I was killed by Dexter. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't see you with that. I used to watch that show years ago, but that was before I knew who you were, and I didn't really pay attention to characters back then. I was just kind of watching it casually, and I didn't finish the series anyway. But that's cool. I didn't know you were killed by Dexter.
Yeah. Well, speaking of sports, linking up together, I played the quarterback, like his nemesis in high school. I was like it was he comes back. It's the first episode of season 6, and he comes back to his high school reunion. And I'm like the quarterback who married the cheerleader, and I was always a jerk. And the cheerleader, of course, as we went on, she committed suicide, everyone thought. But Dexter, of course, knew better, that I was up to no good. And so, he got me. He got me good. So that was a cool one, because that was one of the first shows that I worked on that I was a fan of the show going into it, and so that was a pretty cool experience,
Vin Diesel, is he that big in real life? I'm about 210, 5'10", 210, 210 pounds. How big is Diesel?
Actually, you guys are probably similar size. Yeah, he's definitely jacked.
Right.
Yeah. I'm taller than him, but his presence is pretty large. It's not that he's short. He definitely comes across on screen. You'd probably say taller than I am, but I'm 6'2", so I'm certainly taller than him. But his muscles aren't fake, if that's what you're asking.
No, someone's peeking in the background there. I think that's your daughters there.
Oh, can you shut that, sweetie? Thank you. Love you. Shut the door. Thank you.
My daughter's curious too. She's only 3, and she's the boss of the house right now.
Oh yeah, it doesn't end, boy.
It
That one's 10. That one's 10 going on 20.
It's surprising how bossy these girls are. I mean, the boys, he's been a year and a half. He's not that bossy, but she's pretty much in control of the house.
Totally. And that's not going to end.
So I got to ask you, so Fuller House was one of the biggest roles, right? That's what put you on the map for a lot of people recognizing you, right? Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it was as far as being consistent, right? So I was on it for 5 years, and it was, at one time, we got word we were the most watched comedy in the world. At one time we were Netflix #1 show. So all the eyeballs were definitely at a, when you see your social media accounts start to jump and all that kind of stuff. And especially when you get out of LA and it's, you notice people, it was the first time, people kind of would come up to me and say, the thing that was so awesome about Fuller House is it was such a family show. So you would get families that would come up, and you'd have, people from my generation say, man, when I was a kid, I used to watch Full House, and now I watch Fuller House with my kids. Like, everyone said that. That was the kind of, so it would be a whole family that, and it was the kind of job that clearly just brought joy to people's lives. Not, it wasn't some dark, it'd be great to be a part of any of these wonderful shows but they're like heavy. This was a show that just purely brought joy to people. It was a family show. There's so few family shows, I think, left on television at this point, where the entire family can sit down. There's always a life lesson involved. So that part was really, really cool. And it was definitely the role that I think, changed the game for me, for sure.
Are most of these people I mean, they lived in the light for a long time. You got Bob Saget, John Stamos. Honestly, everybody pretty humble people down there.
I got to be honest about this show. Everyone that you see, the love that you see on screen is very similar to the love off screen, and they all stayed close even before Fuller House came back. Like Full House was done. They stayed like a close knit group through the years, even before Fuller House came back. And so the cool thing was they were all so grateful to have another shot at doing what they loved so much, that they were all just grateful and humbled to be there. There wasn't, sometimes when you work on, say, like a pilot, you have a bunch of individuals that are coming together all on individual paths, kind of all wanting to excel in their own world. This was an old family coming back together, getting to do the thing that they loved the most. In fact, in the beginning, I was just worried about stepping on toes. I didn't know they were so close knit. I didn't know that, like, how welcoming they would be. And it couldn't have been more the opposite. It was like going to that awesome family barbecue where you feel so welcome and everyone's like, no, come in, come enjoy the food, come enjoy some of the love that we have. And it was truly the love and joy that you see on screen was truly what you saw off screen. And it was what made the job special, is the times that the camera wasn't rolling. It was us hanging out in the trailers. It was us hanging out in the makeup room. It was the rehearsals in the morning and laughing through rehearsal when no one's in the audience. And it was, hanging out on the weekends, or, going to do fun events together. It truly, everyone was, the legacy cast was awesome. They were super, welcoming, like sharing the stage with someone like Bob Saget. He couldn't have been cooler, man. And he's so grateful to be there. And he's a mentor, he's a friend, he's a brother. He just wants to love everybody up, make people laugh. He cherishes every moment. He constantly reminded us how special the moment was. Like, he didn't take it for granted. Every single time we were on set, he goes, this is 1 in a million. You get to do a hit show. Right. He's like, but to do it twice, that's lightning in a bottle. He would talk about it all the time. Like, how unreal it is to get the chance to do something of that magnitude twice. So none of them took it for granted. And, everyone really, it was a really cool, special experience.
Now, I'm sure, sitcoms across the board, a lot of people are known for that sitcom character. Bob Saget is Danny
Sure.
Tanner. Steve Urkel, Jaleel White is Steve Urkel.
Yeah, I played in a fantasy league with him. He's a great guy.
Yeah. And the problem is, though, you're kind of known for that character. Why do you think it is that some characters don't want to still be known as that character? Now, I don't want to just name names here, but I'm just saying, like, they're kind of known for that, which is a good thing, because that's huge. You are Danny Tanner, sure. Knows you. You are world known. Yet sometimes I find that, now again, not talking about Bob Saget here particularly, but it kind of hinders your role from getting other roles, because you're kind of known as character. Is that an issue? But I think you slipped away because you were big enough on the show to be recognized, but not big enough to known as Matt Harmon. That, people won't default to that. But I think a lot of sitcom characters, not just Fuller House, not just Family Matters, but other shows, I can go on forever. Boy Meets World, right? I know. Of course, yeah. Yeah. Like, is that a problem? And would you want to be known as a character? And would you want to relive that character? And is that something that would hinder, future jobs in Hollywood?
Well, first of all, it's a good problem to have, right? Because if you're so known that you're known as that character, you did something right. I think one thing, especially in sitcoms and comedies, you're playing such bold characters, like you mentioned Urkel, right? Like, that's such a bold character that it gets stuck in people's minds. And on such a show that was so successful. Same with these guys. And so, I guess on one hand, it can be difficult to break out, but it also can be, it can be fun. Like, I see what John Stamos does. Like, he jumps around from, the comedy playing Jesse on our show, and then goes and does, darker roles, or does, off the wall, or like Bob Saget is known, on our show, he's known as, America's dad, wants to give you a hug, wants to clean the house. And that we all know his stand-up acts aren't necessarily as clean as his house on Full House, so to speak. Right. So, there's, and I think he's probably made a career of getting to shock people in that regard. So I guess, it is what you make of it. If you have the problem that you're so well known for a character, like I said, it's a good problem to have. And then I think it just becomes on you and your reps. I know when I got off the show this last year, it was our goal to kind of go after, like, I'll always love to go back and do comedy. It's like what I really enjoy. I love to make people laugh. The live audience thing, the sitcom thing is so fun. But I'm a classically trained actor who loves to play characters and get dark and deep and gritty. And so one of our goals right away was to, like, do something completely opposite. And my first gig after Fuller House was a film that I did earlier this year called The Undertaker's Wife, which is like a deep, dark, like psychological thriller. Like it couldn't be further from Dr. Matt Harmon. There's no goofing around for sure.
Right.
So it was awesome. It was a way to like, to ping pong back and forth between comedy and drama. Yeah, so I mean, people get known for certain characters, but then I think it just becomes your job to either break out of the role or live with it and take advantage of it. There's people that have made entire long careers of being one person in Hollywood, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It just comes down to what you want to do.
I'm curious that I'm talking to a Hollywood actor, living, breathing, and active right now. So I got Hollywood questions for you here. So
Sure.
we talked about you kissing, characters on stage, right? McCandless camera and stuff like that. My wife and I talk about it all the time. Would you want me to be an actor? My wife's like, hell no, I wouldn't want you to be an actor because I don't want to see you kissing anybody else. So I'm very grateful that you are in a, loving relationship. It's been a while, and I'm grateful I'm in a relationship. I'm genuinely happy for you. But how is that not an issue if you kiss somebody as attractive? It's Candace Cameron
Sure.
on screen.
It's funny. People outside the business ask this all the time. And number one, I've been with my wife for like 17 years. So that's one blessing. She's the rock. We don't have jealousy in our relationship. She's, been just such an amazing fixture in my life for so long. Two, she was an actor at one point, and so she kind of understands it. And I think more importantly, like being on set or having her around on set, you realize like what a job it is. That it's not as romantic and fantastic as you see on screen. On set, it's very technical. It's very, you have a crew of 40 or 50 people around you, holding lights, doing this, touching up makeup. One of my first jobs where that was a thing was on One Life to Live. I played a character who ended up getting married on the show, and we had on a soap opera, you have a love interest, but it literally couldn't have been, less romantic off screen, right? Because first of all, you're rehearsing with this person every day. They just become like a buddy of yours. And then when you're shooting, you have this director in the sky because they're in the booth and they would like be like, hold. And then, hey, John, can you move 2 inches to the left? And you're blocking her right eye. And John, can you push her hair out of, off her forehead and then move your hand down here? And like, I mean, it was so technical
Right.
that, there's not, and then especially, so it really is a job. I know that sounds cliche, but it truly is. And you just become friends with all these people. And my wife becomes friends with these actresses, and I think it comes down to who you are, and what kind of relationship you have at home. Like I said, I'm just blessed to, my wife knew me when I was slanging drinks as a bartender. So, she knows me as who I am, not what you see on TV. And it just having a stable relationship at home, I think, is the most important part.
But what is, you have such a high turnover and such a high rate of divorce in Hollywood. What do you think is the biggest problem? If you get to the root of it, is it lack of communication? Is it narcissism? Is it just finding the next big thing? And what do you think is it a combination of all these? Why do you think so many Hollywood relationships fail?
Well, I think it's a combination of those things. I think the ones that you see in the limelight that fail, part of the reason is they end up spending so much time apart, which is tough. You have big stars that are shooting, overseas for half a year. Or the other thing is it is a very egocentric, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but it's a very individual career path. And if you have two people doing that, in each fighting for their own career, often they'll go in different directions. Jealousy is a tough thing in some people's relationship, and I'm not one to judge. I happen to be in a super strong non-jealous relationship, but I know I've seen it happen where jealousy can definitely sneak in there. So, it's a combination of factors. The pressures are another one. I mean, there's so much pressure on you as an actor that is, everyone thinks it's so cool to be an actor, and it's wonderful to be an actor, but the pressure is like none other, where, if you lived somewhere where no one cares about what you're doing, there isn't that pressure. So you don't have, other people and their eyeballs on you all the time, analyzing all the little things that you're doing. And so, it's a combination of a lot of that. And, Hollywood can be a very tough place.
Right.
It's difficult. it's a cutthroat world. And so I think a lot of, all those factors add up to sometimes, and then the other thing is some people just don't get married for the right reasons. Fortunately, like I said, I met my wife long before I was ever successful as an actor. And I think that is super important. And I remember when I was first moving to LA and I told my mom, I was like, I hope I meet the woman of my dreams before my dreams come true. And like, in other words, I don't want to be on the better side of success and then meet someone and then question. I think that's, that pops up in a lot of relationships. They question why each other are together or why so-and-so is with me. I've never questioned it, because we fell in love back when we were just like starving artist kids. And I feel very blessed for that reason.
No, it's good to hear that you guys have that solid foundation prior to you really taking off with your roles and stuff like that. I want to transition to sports here. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
have some fun here before we do that. I've been doing this thing with like who would win a fight. I bug my wife with this all the time. Like, honey, who would win a fight? You or that lady across? Joe, stop with the who wins in a fight. But it's just kind of like a little thing that opens things up and people laugh. And again, if you know me, you'd be annoyed because I do this all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I got one for you. Let's have some
Okay.
fun here. I'm putting you on the spot. And I've always been curious about this myself because I grew up watching martial arts and I was a big Full House fan. But be honest with me. Who would
Yeah.
win the fight in your opinion? Jesse, Joey, or Dandy out of the three guys? Who's the toughest guy out of there if it was a fight?
Oh, for sure, Joey. It would
Hockey
be
player, right?
Coulier. Yeah, hands down.
You think
I
Jesse
love them
would be?
all. I mean, they're three great dudes. But here's the thing that people don't understand about Dave. The three of them are very different kind of comedians, and ironically, Dave plays the goofiest of the three characters,
Right.
right? Like Jesse kind of plays the cool guy, and Danny plays like the anal dad, and,
Yeah.
and Dave plays the goofball. The thing that I always tell people about Dave that's really interesting though is he's a pilot, right?
Right.
So if anyone that knows a pilot, they know how like technical they are,
Right.
and how calm and cool and collected they are as when pressure is on. And as goofy as Dave makes Joey on screen, it is very calculated. He is a super professional. And just an all around fun dude to like sit back and have a beer with. Yeah, and he's also, I mean, he's a diehard lifelong hockey player, and we all know those hockey players. They can throw the sticks down every once in a while. So, if it ever were to come to that, my money would be on Joey.
The tail of the tape, height and reach has to go to Bob Saget
It
there.
definitely goes to Bob. Yeah.
Power and endurance probably with Joey and Jesse. I don't know, man. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Maybe elusiveness goes to John Stamos there.
I think he'd just charm you to sleep. Bob would pull you in for the hug, and Joey might catch you with the left hook.
I had to transition over to sports somehow, but what is your fascination? Where did your passion for sports come in? Because again, you're crazy about fantasy football. You love
Yeah.
it. Big football fan. What's your favorite football team, and why did you get into sports? Did you watch it growing up? And it's
Yeah,
just
for sure. It's funny because I was raised by a single mom, but like football was always just something I was obsessed with from a very young age. Grew up in a very sports-driven community. Sports were a huge deal in my community, and I had an older brother, 13 years older, that was a superstar football player, and he kind of was the first person to get me kind of hooked in it. And then I kind of grew from there. I was just your kind of good old fashioned typical, like, jock, just loves anything that anytime, whether it was a throwing the ball or even, playing ping pong or whatever it was, playing pool, whatever it was that I could compete. I loved competition.
right.
So sports were always just a huge, huge thing for me. I grew up in the Northwest, so I'm a big Seahawks fan. I also had family play for the Patriots, so I was a Patriots fan. Those roads crossed for a Super Bowl, so that was kind of crazy.
Big Russell. Are you a big Russell fan?
Oh yeah, I mean, how can you not love Russ? I mean, he's like, honestly, he's everything that you could ever want in a franchise quarterback. On top of being like the squeaky clean, cool guy that, like, if you follow Russ, before the pandemic, each week during the season, he goes to the children's hospital and like shows up and like spends time with the kids. So like, I mean, he's honestly, one of the coolest, franchise quarterbacks that you could have on your diehard team. I think we got really lucky there.
So I realized I got something that you want for sure. So I got into fantasy. Before I got into fantasy, I came up with a fantasy frame, which was like a league prize. You put your sports cards in of your fantasy team, you engrave it, and it's like a cool
Oh, that's
frame.
cool.
Yeah, it was like kind of the idea. It's kind of like my door kicker into fantasy industry. And then I started buying a bunch of cards and stuff like that. This is back in 2012. I started collecting cards. And then I didn't know this until like a couple of weeks ago. I go back and look through my old collection, and it's preserved. It's in hard plastic. I got 2 rookie cards. Russell Wilson. I got a signed Russell Wilson serial numbered card. I think it's like 50 out of 99. So I looked on eBay, and they're asking, I mean, a raw card is $4,000. If it's graded, if I do grade it, it's over 10 grand. I mean, there's only 100 of them made. And I also got a raw prism. Prism's the best make you can get. It's a Panini prism. I got 2 of them, and I'm just like, okay, I'm putting on, a down payment on a mortgage right now. You know what I mean?
He's going to win the MVP this year. That'd be time to cash in on that one.
I'm going to hang on to those, and I hope he wins MVP. He's been looking rock solid. And just sometimes you don't even realize what you got in your closet till you open it up.
Totally. Man, I'll tell you what, he deserves it. To find out that he's never received an MVP vote before this year, I think it's going to inspire everyone to vote for him, which is they should. And B, I mean, like, talk about a guy that carries his team. And like, listen, I'm a huge Patrick Mahomes fan. But just think about Russell Wilson in that offense with those tools and that playbook. I mean, the things he would be doing. And I'm glad they're letting him cook this year, because he is doing them. He's doing them in Seattle. I mean, he's throwing the rock all over the yard. He's got receivers that are so fun to watch. I mean, how do you not love DK? And to be the 10th receiver off the board in his draft, he had guys like Andy Isabella and JJ Osei-Whiteside, guys that you're like, wait, what? They went ahead of DK Metcalf?
I know.
Give me a break. And so, it's fun to be a Seahawks fan right now for sure.
But they say the quarterback does make the receiver. I think it works that way. Big Ben's done it with receivers. He's done great things. Claypool looks really good. I don't think the volume's there for him with the Steelers right now. But it's just been a crazy year. I mean, it's crazy, from injuries to the world situation now with this disease. And it's been absolutely crazy. Is there any shocks to you this year that, like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened, that kind of stuck out to you from the NFL?
Gosh, I mean, you're right. It has been a crazy, the tail of the tape between what's going on between like almost like Brady versus Belichick, now that he's, flew south. That's been interesting to watch, because like right now you'd say, advantage Brady. I think there's a lot of circumstances that have made that. Brady also walked into an incredible situation, and, the Patriots, are a shell of what they used to be, especially with all the players that opted out at the beginning of the season. So it kind of was set up for Brady to be successful this year. But you got to give it to him, the fact that he looks great, man. He doesn't look your traditional 43. He's slinging the rock all over the yard without a problem. And he's throwing it deep when he needs to. And so that's been fun to watch. It's been crazy in fantasy. I mean, over half of the first round draft picks have been hurt, which is, it's been devastating to people. And there's just been so many, question marks in fantasy this year. So that's always, and there's always, that's what's fun about fantasy, is the draft's one thing, and then after that, you got to play the wire and do the whole thing.
So many busts. Like, I mean, Eckler to Michael Thomas to Saquon. I lost Saquon. I can't believe Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey being banged up, Nick Chubb being banged up, George Kittle, Nixon. I can go on forever, man. It's been absolutely insane.
I mean, who in the first round has gone untouched? Maybe like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but he's not even necessarily, and I love him. He's on a bunch of my teams, but he's not necessarily living up to what people, just because he hasn't got the touchdowns, right? He's only got 2 on the year. So like, although he's got 2 called back, he'd have 4. Right. But, other than that, like, what other first rounders really have been untouched? I mean, even Dalvin Cook missed a couple games.
Adams missed a couple games. He was a late first.
Adams missed a couple games. I mean, literally every single first round pick has been banged up, and it's, it just goes to show you got to keep picking right after that first round.
I'm really disappointed about Jonathan Taylor. I just did a post right now on
I know
really like, who the heck is Jordan Wilkins? Why is he, like, come on, man? Like, why? I mean, play Jonathan Taylor. And it just bothers me that these guys don't get opportunity. I'll give you a perfect example of that. Rojo, you go back a couple of years, he was endorsing the Counselor brand. I actually met him. He's like, this show is brought to you by the, Fantasy Ball Counselor, brought to you. This is Rojo. Like he was endorsing the brand. I was excited to have him on. It was supposed to be a huge breakout year, and they kept running Peyton Barber. And as you know, if you follow my brand, Peyton Barber sucks. And that's what I say all the time. And they wouldn't give up on Peyton Barber, and finally got the opportunity. He's doing okay. He's doing good. But again, I just hate when players are really talented and they get hindered by the situation. It bothers me.
I know it's tough, but it is, it just goes to show how important this is. Because look, he had 300-yard games in a row, and then Fournette comes in. Now, I get why they're splitting the carries between them. They're trying to keep their guys healthy, but it just shows how important opportunity is. It's like when Fournette was sidelined, Rojo had the opportunity. He put 300-yard games back to back to back. I mean, who else has done that in the league this year? And then Fournette comes in. They're still winning, but now each guy's putting up 50 to 60 yards a game, and they're just trying to keep everybody healthy. But it goes to show you how important, opportunity is for these guys. Who's throwing the ball, the offensive line, that is something that I think is so underrated, look at Lev Bell, man. I mean, he was behind the best offensive line in the league for many years with one of the greatest quarterbacks, system, receivers. Then he goes to the Jets and you don't even hear from him. The only reason you hear from him is because everyone knows how much he's getting paid. Otherwise he'd be an afterthought. And then last week, what do you have? 6 carries for 7 yards and a fumble against his former team.
He's a system guy. I think he's a system guy. He's a system of the Steelers offense. I don't think he's that good.
I mean, everyone's a fit system of the Steelers offense. And I love James Conner, but look at D'Angelo Williams. Even when Benny Snell got his shot,
right,
he was balling out in that offense. I mean, I think it's a situation where, and I love running backs. We all love them. They're so fun to follow and root for. But they are products of their system. They're products of their offensive line. You can't be a great running back in the NFL with a bad offensive line. It just doesn't work, and so, it kind of is what it is.
Well, you've probably been following my stuff. I've had it out on social media with a couple.
Oh, yeah.
Who would win the fight? Okay, so I'm going to tell you my background, Le'Veon Bell. Now, do you know much about fighting? Do you watch UFC, boxing? Did you grow up watching any fighting?
Not much. No, not a UFC guy. If I'm with my buddies and it's on, then great. But it's not necessarily our family show around my household. So I don't know the guys.
So why am I wasting my time asking you who to win the fight when you can't break down fight footage? But listen,
I probably can't. My money would be on the professional athlete if I had to pick, but
but I genuinely, in my heart of hearts, I know this with absolute certainty. If you get me the right training, just get my cardio up. But my cardio's got to come up. I could 100% beat Le'Veon Bell. The guy's a pretty boy. I don't think he's ever been punched in the face. Maybe he had street fights growing up. Who knows, right? We all got our fights growing up. He's never had any competitive type of training at all. So if there's a charity of his choice, I'm willing to fight Le'Veon Bell. I'm down, man, any day, anytime. And I've been hit in the face. I've done 2 MMA fights, mind you. I didn't do great. I was 1-1. I've had kickboxing fights. I've done a ton of sparring. I've got punching bags. I'm constantly sharpening my tools. So I'm ready to go.
Let's get that charity going.
So who would win? Who would you put your money on if I had the right? You have to see both of us in our training, right? Before you put your money down.
Man, no comment on that one. My gut would tell me I would take the professional athlete over the podcast host, but I would hate to insult you on your own show.
Hey, listen, I got a little bit of chub around. He actually said I was fat in one of his videos. Like, who's this fat guy coming in to take me on? Listen,
you know what? I think you win because they comment on you, right? I mean, right off the bell, you got it, man, because the fact that you draw them in, you go fishing for these guys and then you hook them and then they find the need to snap back at you. I mean, you've already won. You don't need to enter the ring at that point.
What is it with them? Don't they realize I'm an entertainer? Don't they realize that I'm acting? Don't they realize it's fantasy football? They take it so personally, and it's such a sensitive thing. It's because the mainstream analysts in my industry don't really come out and say stuff like that. So when you have somebody, an analyst, a commentator, a guy that's verified on Instagram saying, "Hey man, you suck," I guess I kind of understand it, but it's they take it to another level. They get genuinely upset. And even when I DM them and say, "Hey dude, I'm acting," then they still get upset. They block me after. I'm like, dudes, relax.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, man, I get what you're doing. You're the shock jock of the fantasy football world. The point that you do make that I find to be very valid is when you bring up the fact that, you have 60 million people playing fantasy sports. And there's a lot of these guys that you
Right.
wouldn't even know their names if it wasn't for fantasy sports. Like the reason third, fourth, and fifth receivers on teams are known nowadays is because of fantasy sports and people trying to find waiver wire pickups and stuff like that. Like you wouldn't know who these guys were if it wasn't for fantasy sports. Now, does that mean that they suck or whatever? That's, I leave that to you. I leave the trash talking to you on that one. But I can understand the entertainment aspect and getting a rise out of these guys.
I
And
used to
I
say,
do think that the
sorry.
love for fantasy sports and the importance it has played in, it's kind of like what fantasy sports to football is like the Tiger Woods effect to golf. Like he changed the game. He put so many more eyes on the game that he made everyone in that he made all the other professional golfers wealthy because there were so many more eyes on. And I have no doubt that like there are more endorsement deals and things like that as a result of fantasy sports because there are so many more eyes on football as there ever was before. And so that's where I think these guys need to be grateful for fantasy sports. And I think for the most part that they are, except they get a little hurt and you see them tweeting like, I don't care about your fantasy team. And I get it. Like, of course they're trying to win. They're not trying to, but you're right. Like fantasy sports has definitely brought them, more eyeballs.
Someone made a comment about that. When they say, I don't care about your fantasy football team, they kind of should, because that directly relates to how they produce. So if they produce crappy, they're probably not putting up a lot of fantasy ones. So they should kind of care about fantasy because that's their stats. I guess they're trying to say we win. We care about winning more. I don't know. They should care.
I mean, that's for sure. I mean, but like, for example, like when Brady was a couple of years ago, he wasn't putting up the hugest numbers, but he's taking his team to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, there are situations where you're not going to be necessarily your fantasy scores aren't going to, they're much more concerned about winning on the football field. And of course, any competitor understands that. But you're right. Yeah. I mean, it relates to how successful they are at their job.
Did you hear the story with Todd Gurley? What happened? How he stopped short of the goal line a couple years ago, and then what happened with Gurley this year? You saw what happened
Man,
there?
I know how that was heartbreaking that, he tried, you could see it was almost like he fought so hard to break that tackle right before the goal line that his momentum carried him in. And if he had just gotten tackled, they'd probably have ended up winning the game. But both you and I have him on different teams. So, we were excited that he scored from a fantasy perspective, but it was heartbreaking to watch. He tried with all his might to come up short.
Well, I have a story about it. Let me explain a quick story. So it was a couple years ago when he actually did stop short purposely and screwed a ton of fantasy teams. And I went online and I ripped into him. I called him an a-hole. I don't know what I said. I said he's an ass basically for stopping. What a sucker he is, even though he was doing the right thing stopping for his team. This is a couple years ago. And then I get my DMs blowing up saying, Joe, you're on TV. I'm like, what do you mean on TV? So they did a documentary on, I think it was on Showtime. There was a show called Action. It was a sports betting show. And they're talking about crazy people and how they're crazy about betting. Seriously, it's a true story. It's called, I think I'm episode 3. And they took a clip of my YouTube channel where I said something like Gurley's an ass. And they took several clips of that and put it in there into that show. So this was something that stuck in my head. And then when he actually went in, you saw me doing the dance and celebrating the fact that he actually scored for fantasy purposes.
Right. You motivated him.
Yeah, definitely. So he cares about fantasy now by the looks of it, which I
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
So yeah, I want to talk about your physical fitness here, and then we'll kind of wrap it up here. But and especially acting, because we see a lot of actors like Christian Bale, a lot of phenomenal actors, Matthew McConaughey, guys like that have to go down to a role and they got to lose a lot of weight. Do that. For you, first of all, what do you do to keep in shape? That's my first one. And have you had any roles that have that demand on you where you got to maintain shape? So for example, Fuller House, you're there for 4 to 5 years. What if you started just binging on Twinkies for a month? Is there something, or does something control you from doing that? Or is it just personal preference? Like what if you did, gain 100 pounds by season 2? Who is telling you, John, no, you got to get back in shape? How does that work in Hollywood?
Well, look, a show like Fuller House, it wasn't that they were having there was enough physical demands on me. I put that pressure on myself, that that's obviously not necessarily just who I would want to be. Now I've been involved in roles like when I was on One Life to Live, they literally would say, okay, in 2 weeks, you're going to, walk out of the steam room with a towel on, like, so be ready. So they'd be very clear about, you know, be ready to have a shirtless scene. And, so it really depends on the role. Fuller House, there was no one ever really, tapping me on the shoulder, talking about that, but it's just something, I enjoy, staying in somewhat shape and being healthy and all that kind of stuff. And my family enjoys it. My wife's active. So it's just kind of a lifestyle thing more than anything. But there hasn't necessarily been, a role where I say needed to get like really skinny or get really fat or something like that. Other than, like I said, when I was on One Life, our executive producer was very clear when we had, semi-naked scenes coming.
So are these trainers available? Like, can they give you help? Is that all covered? How does that work if you need a trainer? Hey man, I've been slacking, I'm a little stressed out. Can you find me a trainer? Are they readily available on the sidelines offset? How does it work like that?
Like I'm saying on Fuller House, actually, we were on stage 24. It was right next to the Warner Brothers gym, which I loved because I would go in there all the time. There was trainers there if I wanted to use them. We did have to pay for them. They weren't under contract. Now I know some people, like if they're going to play some superhero, it might be worked into their contract that, they're going to be trained, for a while. I've got to do other cool training stuff. Like when I was for Furious 7, we had like weapons training. So that wasn't necessarily a physical like body thing, but it was like, this former Navy SEAL trainer, we literally had like arms training with him with real weapons and, doing kind of trick stuff. Yeah, no, but like with our weapons, like little stuff to make it look cool and savvy.
Oh, okay.
You could change your ammunition on the fly, things like that like someone who had been doing it for years would do. Being able to like we did this thing where it was literally like dropping your mag, and by the time your mag hits the ground, you've got a new one in lock, stock, and shooting without ever taking your eye off the barrel. Like cool little tricks that, I remember training for that film. Like we'd go on the weekend. This was when we were shooting out in Atlanta, and we had this giant scene where like we were, this big fight scene. And, it gets shrunken down on in the movie to like 12 seconds, but we spent, a long period of time choreographing all the different moves and shooting and all this, and it was pretty fun. It was like playing, grown up G.I. Joe. And so that kind of stuff is really fun, to do. So
you look pretty lean right now. What are you doing to keep in shape? What type of workouts are you doing?
Frankly, with the 2020 kind of quarantine situation, I got a home gym, kind of like you. I go out in my garage. I got the traditional. I love to jump rope. And then I've got, the pull-up bar and the mats and a couple of barbells and, go to town and, kind of, I create a circuit for myself and just kind of go, I try to do a little bit of a full body thing. And then other days I'll go for a run. Like that's kind of like my go-to, just like cardio. And before that, I used to be a diehard Barry's Boot Camp. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but I used to go. It's all over the world now, but me and my wife used to go when it was just Barry. He had his little shop in West Hollywood. Now they've literally got locations all over the world. And that's just like a high intensity cardio training. It's half cardio, half weights, high intensity treadmill. And then you're doing a circuit training on the floor. Which I enjoy because after an hour you walk out of there just dripping sweat and you're good for the day. But whatever it is,
I love the home gym. I've got a nice setup here. I just got one of those Airdyne bikes ordered. It's a Rogue Echo thing. I didn't care. I don't care what it costs. I ordered one. It's in the garage. Punching bag, ladder, everything. Medicine ball, weights, chin up bar, yoga mat for stretches, abs, trampoline. Everything. I love it. And again, you got to be, I was talking to Chris Gronkowski and he was saying, you got to be self-motivated. Now it was a record year due to the situation with COVID for equipment being sold. So a lot of gym memberships, not as popular, people working out at home, but I love it. I mean, I wouldn't want any other way, honey, my wife yells, lunch is ready. I'm like, oh great. Let me get a workout in. I don't got to travel. I don't got to punch into a gym. I don't got to worry about sanitizing my hands on every machine. It's right here.
No, I feel you. That's why, that's what I've got going on now. And whether it's like, oh, I got 20 minutes, I just want to go burn real quick, or I got an hour and I can really hit it hard, whatever it may be. I mean, I was literally in the garage this morning when you text me, and I'm working out, and my daughter's watching Frozen. We're in the same room, but we're all doing our thing.
My daughter's still on Peppa Pig right now. Peppa Pig's a big thing for her right now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know.
you never heard of Peppa Pig?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Oh, it's a huge thing for kids. I didn't know about it either till I had a young daughter, and then it's a huge thing. It's like these cheesy cartoon characters. If you look at them, it's like you and I could probably draw them. I don't know if you're an artist or not, but I'm not. But it's a huge thing with kids. So I went on Amazon, ordered her a Peppa watch. But these kids are so smart. At 3 years old, she's navigating I got the brand new iWatch. So she's
right?
Then they're navigating. I don't want to say her name, but SIRI. When you talk to your watch and you say,
yeah.
If I say it, it'll activate all my devices right now. So I don't want to do it. But hey, SIRI. And she's starting to do that now. So she gets this Peppa watch. She brings it in. I'm excited. I'm like, honey, just tape it because I know she's going to be excited. She's got this Peppa watch. She gets it. And she's not a touch screen. It's kind of this old school digital thing. And then she's looking at my watch. She's not even interested, man. These kids are like way ahead of where we were when we were young.
They really are. Now, mine are 8 and 10, and I'm a pretty technically savvy dude, but even now, like, they'll show me stuff that I'm like, oh, wow. Like, and the thing that I've noticed with them also is just how quickly they learn it.
Yeah.
Their capacity for learning is like just crazy.
Sponges.
And they, you're right. They would much rather play with our iPhone than some fake cheesy, cartoon version of their phone that you get at Toys R Us. They just, they don't want the imitation. They want the real thing.
And they're like, honestly, their brain is like a sponge. They absorb everything, and they're like ninjas on the phone. Like, she'll do stuff. She'll pull a menu. Like, how did you pull that menu up? What'd you do? It's
totally
unbelievable. And I want to end this off here real quick here. Okay. So actors probably recognize good actors. I mean, I'm pretty good. I'm not an American Idol judge, but I could tell you a good singer. I've got a good ear and I've got a good eye. Like, I've got a good sense of like media and acting. I can tell you who a good actor is. But I want to ask you your favorite show, and I'm going to tell you mine, and maybe you can agree. I don't know whether you watch or not. I've just pulled up the cast here. And I got to say that one of the best shows on TV is This Is Us. Have you seen it? Do you watch it?
It's here. No, I don't. But ironically, one of the This Is Us houses is like right at the end of my block, and they were just there shooting yesterday. They might actually be there again today. So wow. I see them all the time. It just happens to be a crazy time where we just haven't been watching much television. So I've only seen a few episodes here and there, spotty. There hasn't been a lot of TV that we've watched recently. My personal favorite show that I can't wait till it comes back is Succession. It's so good. It's incredible. There are 2 seasons in. I think each season is like 10 episodes, but it's so good. I just started, what's it called? The Good
Doctor?
Song. No, I think it's called The Good Song. It's Ethan Hawke's new show on Showtime. The Good Bird Song. I forget exactly what it is, but it's about essentially the Civil War time. And Ethan Hawke just plays a sultry character trying to free enslaved people back before that was he was kind of the one. It's based on a true story, and he sort of kicked off that movement. But I literally just started. We watched Ratchet this last month, which is based on Nurse Ratchet from the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, that was a great movie with Jack Nicholson. Yes, beautiful movie.
So good. This was the prequel to that, and I'm not sure when they're going to catch up to that time. Season 1, they didn't get there. I imagine they'll get there as time goes on. But I hear This Is Us is amazing. We just haven't really gotten into it.
But I got to commend him, man. I got to give credit where it's due. But this guy, Sterling Brown, the guy that plays Randall, in the show. I mean, brilliant actor, Mandy Moore. I mean, everybody in this show is just top notch. And I think the show is so good because it's relatable. They lose their, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's a loss in the family, and like it's just so relatable. And I lost my dad. It just relates. And like their age is like ours, like they're guys in the late 30s, and like they go back, they do flashbacks, and it's like they kind of reference like the Steelers in the 90s. They talk about how they grew up watching
Yeah.
sports with their dad. So it's very like goosebumpy, relatable, and it's
Nostalgic. And yeah,
oh,
that's what I hear.
brilliant, brilliant show, and I can't get enough of it. And but the thing is, a lot of shows kind of annoying, to be honest. Almost every
Yo,
show.
you're such a softie, man. You have this image of
Yeah, I'm opening up here. Yeah, you got to show some emotion once in a while, right?
Amen. Totally.
Yeah, don't tell anybody I'm talking about this now. But no,
Of course not.
seriously. But I lost my train of thought here. But I mean, unbelievable acting. But what I was saying is, what I hate is a lot of shows are mimicking this in the sense that they're going back in time a lot in shows now, which is
Sure.
like the timeline is like 0 to 100. Now they go to 0 to 50, back to 10, back, and they go even deeper. I don't know what it is. Is this like a trend now where you got to go back?
Yeah.
Why are they doing this all the time?
Nostalgia is just something that I think is, so valuable to hit on. And I think everyone, and I think times are starting to move so fast that it was kind of like our generation with the Wonder Years. Like it's always fun to kind of go back. It slows things down a little bit.
Right.
And to a time, that some people would say, where, quality of life may have been more what they preferred, or, a time that they remember, they have fond memories of. But I think, nostalgia is just really something. I mean, it's a reason why Fuller House was such a success, is that it toyed with those, heartstrings that they could, like I said, these families that say, hey man, I used to watch it when I was a kid. Now I watch it with my kids. So I think there's just something fun about going back in time, and then shows that just do it in general. Like Mad Men's one of my all-time favorite shows. And it was just because, and it felt like it was stuck in time, and someone who didn't grow up in that era, it was so fun to like peek in the window of that era. And then knowing people from that, like my parents, my mom loved the show because she was like, you wouldn't believe how spot on it is. And I loved it because it was like reading a history book. So yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said to touch on nostalgia.
Okay, so I want to end this with one more thing here. What show would you recommend for people to watch? I want to recommend, you recommend me a show, and I'll recommend you a show. And I just started watching this one, but the actress is brilliant. Hilary Swank, remember her from Million Dollar Baby? The new Netflix show Away. Have you seen Away yet?
No, I haven't. I'll have to check that out.
Really, really cool. She's an astronaut. She goes away. It's really cool. The husband gets sick at home. She has a daughter. I think the daughter is like 10 or 12. And she's out on the moon, and they're heading towards Mars. It's such a cool show. I'm only like 1 or 2 episodes in, but it's pretty cool. You should check it out. It's called Away.
Oh, for sure. No, I'm a space junkie too, so I'll definitely check that out. And then, like I said, man, you got to check out Succession. It's sort of, I wouldn't say it's based on Rupert Murdoch, but it's the idea of that, like a international media conglomerate, and he's the head of this family. And then it's all the drama that, of who has the power within the family, who has the power on the board, who, the influence that everyone has, how money hungry everyone is, and just the scale of wealth that they're dealing with. And it's just brilliantly executed. Like, it's brilliantly acted. The storytelling's incredible. So that's certainly one of our favorites. We love Billions. I love Billions. I think they're 5 or 6 seasons in now. We've been watching that since the beginning. That's always fun. So yeah, those are.
Have you seen You on Netflix? YOU? You?
No, I haven't.
Another
one
show.
is really good though.
The guy is brilliant, and he's one of those guys. He's like a kind of a Dexter character, where he's kind of creepy and dark. And it's like, my wife thinks he's attractive, and like women think he's attractive, but he's a total creeper stalker. But he's got that that likability to him, and that attractiveness, even though he's a creep, because they show even though he's creepy and psycho, he's got some good qualities where he's good to one character, but he's a jerk to the other character. So kind of like Dexter, right? You kind of love him.
Michael C. Hall nailed that in Dexter. It was he was so great. He was you love to hate him and you hate to love him. He was like, you were rooting for him even though he was killing people.
brilliant actor. So man, I gotta say, it's been over an hour, and I tell you, man, before I got into this show, it's like the stresses of the politics. Even though I don't live in the States full time, it's like the stress of the politics. Like, and then it's like you talk life, you talk, you talk sports, and it just kind of shuts off. And I wasn't even thinking
Totally.
politics. It was great.
Amen. And I think that's the thing that we all have in common is once, you can get past politics is we all have a family. We all, love to watch our favorite sport or our favorite TV show, no matter what side of the aisle, that you're on. And the more we can just come together, the better this planet's going to be.
And I'm a big Joe Rogan fan. And one thing he keeps saying in his podcast is like, we're so detached with social media and there's so many keyboard warriors. But, if you got a far left wing and a far right wing and you put them face to face and you just talk about life, you don't really have that battle, right? You're just
Totally.
friends talking, chilling, talking about life. And I think social media really inflates that feeling of like animosity and tension. And it just creates this false narrative of like, I hate you and you hate me. And there's so much division. And I hope that one point in time we come together and say, hey, we're all God's creatures or whatever it is you believe in. And we all come together and, there's a sense of humanity and realism. And we all just want to live in a place where we're happy and we're thriving and successful, really.
Amen, dude. No, I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, that has been the sort of the dark side of social media. Sure, there's a lot of great parts about it, but it has definitely inflamed division. And I just, hope and pray that one day, we continue to, the pendulum always swings. So I think the day will come that we can all, come back together and agree to disagree. Because, I have people that I love on both sides of the aisle. And like you said, sports I guarantee, like when the Dodgers won, there's,
Right.
lefters and righters out there that are all rooting for the same team. And, when at the end of the day, we can all break bread and share a beer together and find a way to get along.
Yeah, and you got to be strong if you are an influencer like you and myself. You probably don't get as bad as I do, but like there's literally people that come on and call me, I hope you die, you POS. I mean, I've heard it all, man. Like if I listened to everything these people said, it's like I would have probably offed myself at this point. Like you
That's
can't,
awful.
but who talks like that? I mean, even if I do something positive, like the other day I said, congratulations, Dalvin Cook. I eat crow. You had an amazing game. Congrats to you. And people are like, oh, yeah, I hope you die. I'm like, dude, like I just said a good thing. Like, why are you so mean? Like, you don't walk up to on the street to say that to somebody. You just don't do that.
Keyboard courage, man.
Everyone's
Keyboard
tough.
courage.
All right, man. So this was episode 4. I mean, we're just getting started with this, and hopefully I can bring you on for episode, 40 or 400, God willing. And it was a great experience talking to you and getting your insight. Feet on the street of Hollywood, right there for you guys.
Amen. And I look forward to having you back on the Fantasy Football Cause.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks, guys. We're out.